All right, Module 4, Abby Romberger here. The book that I read is Code Girls. I really enjoyed this book. It was actually on one of the books I wanted to read, so good excuse to read it finally. It was about how the men were going off and fighting in the war, and then the Army and Navy had to start recruiting the women because they were getting and intercepting all of these codes and they couldn't break them. So they started getting these women, and they were sent these secret invitations, usually select if they were in college, graduated college, teaching, that sort of things. Maybe they had a math test that I read about the one girl, she applied for a job and they saw their math scores. So really cool. They got to work on cracking these codes from a lot of different places, Japan, Germany, very successful. However, they really couldn't tell anybody about it, and so very few people actually knew how successful they were, and that was because of the fact, obviously, this was a big secret. So that was really cool. I watched the movie Hidden Figures. This is not my first time watching the movie, but I did take it kind of in a different perspective this time. I really enjoyed it, again, the second time. I feel like I learned about the space program, and I learned about these three characters, and I really paid attention to the fact that they really had to be innovators. Like, they had to think outside the box. So I really focused on that piece of it this time. And I love the fact that Catherine, did all of these calculations by hand, and it's played such a huge role in sending this astronaut into orbit. I love the fact that Dorothy took it upon herself to learn more about the IBM, Mary going to court to become an engineer. Like, it was just a really interesting thing, and I really liked it from a different viewpoint, watching it from a different lens. I listened to the podcast, Are There Beaches on Mars from Wow in the World. It was fascinating. I learned actually a lot about this, and I think that it's really cool that scientists discovered that there could have been beaches on Mars. Now, they would have been 4 billion years ago and very cold, but they think it's about 2,000 feet deep and a quarter of the water that's in the Atlantic Ocean and covered about a quarter of the planet. And they're like, well, what happened to it? And they described this solar wind blasting it off like a giant hand dryer, and then also like 99% of it being sucked up into the water, and they're getting that based off of the rock samples from the rover. Because they're finding these hydrated minerals in it, and they think it took about 1 billion years. So, like, I learned about, A, all of this, and B, like, I didn't really know that much about the rover. And so, like, it took 7 months to get there. That's a long time. And their thing was, water is a key to life, and so if there was water there, liquid water, then maybe life did exist, and that changes everything. Also, a kid called in and shared the fact that cats sweat through the pulse, so I thought that was fun. I went to the Whitaker Center. Highly recommend checking out if you've never been there before. It was really neat. They have a bunch of different centers: the Forces of Nature, Kids Place, Carnival of Health, Backstage Studio, STEM Design Studio, and the Animation Academy. The Animation Academy is currently on until January. Everything else is permanent. So I spent time exploring this Animation Academy. I spent so much time. It was fascinating. There is so much interactions that you can do. You got to learn a lot about how animation worked. I liked the storyboard and putting them in order. I liked trying to create the basic bouncy ball. Like, it was so cool. I didn't get a chance to go into the STEM Design Studio. Wasn't open at that time when I was there. I did get to play some time in the kids area with the wind and the earth and the simulations, like the car. It was really cool. Highly recommend going. Like, if you haven't been, and if you have young kids, take them. Even as an adult, I really enjoyed it. It was cool. It was close to me. I had a lot of fun there. The Hidden Figures, I loved it the first time I watched it. I loved it the second time I watched it. I actually think I enjoyed it more the second time because I tried looking through a different lens, coming from like the STEM standpoint. So it was really cool. Code Girls, I learned more about the war than I did. I did not realize how involved the coding was in breaking it. So really fascinating. The podcast I enjoyed so much. I learned a bunch from it. My nephew's in 5th grade, and I was like, texted my sister and I said, hey, you really need to have him listen to this podcast. I think he would really like it. And so I want to see if I can break any of the codes. Like, I think that'd be fun to see, but really liked the book. As I said, the Whitaker Center is really neat to visit. The current Animation Academy is there until January, so take a look at that, I think. The podcast, as I said, I really liked. I think I'd recommend it to a lot of people to listen to. And it was short enough, but I learned a lot in that short time. And the movie I would love to show to my students. I think it shows how important you have to just think outside that box. Like, when Catherine and the main character, the guy, when they were talking about it, like, I think it was really neat to see that and how it actually applied. And then the fact it mentioned Euler's method.